Aloha, this is Rosa McAllister, and welcome back to On Being a Service Warrior, interviews with the firewalkers among us. Those who have had their struggles and yet have chosen to come out the other side into lives of service for others. Click subscribe and tap the notification bell to keep up with future episodes of this ongoing series. If this is your first time joining us, don't forget to catch up with other episodes in this series, as well as other offerings in Network's YouTube channel. Mahalo, thank you, and always remember you are the light, be the light. Hi everyone, aloha and welcome back to another wonderful episode of On Being a Service Warrior. I think it was about 14 years ago, as part of me trying to bring into reality a dream of living in Maui, I started seriously looking into yet another dream, and that was to really study the human body, wellness, and my possible role in helping others find increased wellness. I wasn't sure what exactly this might look like, but I knew it involved going back to school in some way, in some area, making new connections and diving in deeper, both personally and professionally, into stuff that I had only teased and tickled kind of previously. I also believed this meant finding a new teacher and a mentor, and I just knew Maui had something in store for me to answer this searching. So I looked into various schools and programs and wellness modalities to study. I talked with several different schools on Maui and on other islands here in Hawaii. Honestly, I talked with anyone I could find, and several, when learning more about who I was and what I had already been doing personally and professionally, suggested I talk with John Sanderson. John was the owner and life behind the Maui Academy of Healing Arts, and obviously a long time and well-loved Maui resident. I called John and was immediately soothed by his deep, gentle voice. We set up a time to meet, and I came all prepared with notes and questions, a resume and more, typical of me. And I clearly remember John graciously accepting my portfolio, me blabbing on and on about stuff, and then John looking me deeply into my eyes and asking, "Where do you find your energy? What is the source?" I think I stammered and mumbled and probably said something rather bland and inane. He patiently waited. I thought some more and said I really didn't know, but I wanted to. I know we talked some more about his school, his massage program, his philosophy, all of that. He gave me a packet of information that I thumbed through, but quite frankly, I just kept thinking about his question. And then I remember coming home and telling Mike, my husband, what had happened. And Mike laughed and said, "You know, I like this guy. He made you stop." I did go to John's school and learned a lot about the human body, massage, proper technique and protocol. But more, I learned to trust myself better, to lean into my intuition, to embrace my sensitivities, and to proudly offer myself as a wellness practitioner. And along the way, I found not just a great teacher in John, but also a wonderful friend. And so I am thrilled that today's guest on Being a Service Warrior is my buddy, John Sanderson.
Wow, that's a nice introduction. Thank you so much. You've sent me some questions about being reflective about my life in service, and I appreciate those. They made me think a lot. And I think the first question had to do with how I saw myself. Who am I? How would other people who know me make some comments about me? So one of the first ones is I have a weird sense of humor, but I like it, and it gets people to laugh. But mostly I see myself as being a good friend to people and a good listener. And I see those things as an ongoing process. More and more now that I'm retired, I'm trying to be a better friend to myself. I really believe in the process of friendship and what happens when you deeply listen, because it's always a learning environment. I'm curious about other people. When you came to me, I mean, you came with a whole history of being of service to people. And you had lots of skills. And so what I like to do is to build on those skills, to honor you, to honor your process, and to continue that kind of exploration process with you. So for me, being a friend is really important. I've had lots of really good friends over the years that I've had for 30, 40, and 50 or more years. And as I get older, that friendship and those friendships continue to grow. People constantly make contact, particularly in this time when we're all kind of hunkering down at home. The phone becomes increasingly important, or what we're doing now, FaceTiming. So to me, I think one of the processes that we all need to do is to realize that we're all on this planet together. We all need each other. One of the philosophies of my school was that we're all healers and we all need to be healed. We can help each other and help ourselves. So it's an ongoing commitment. I think there's going to be levels of depth that we haven't even begun to explore. Lots of challenges, both personally and environmentally. Boy, lots of things to improve upon. When I thought about you and your networks for training, I like the word networks because it's really important. The bottom of my resume says what I'm about is creating community within, between, and among people. And so I'm constantly trying to honor that process.
That's beautiful, John. And I think very true to who you are and how you live. And yes, the ridiculous sense of humor.
We got to laugh. I mean, you know, it's important to be able to cry sometimes, but laughing is, boy, it just opens up the heart and kind of breaks the challenges sometimes that we're dealing with mentally or emotionally. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. You are the pun master. I will give you that. So in thinking about your life, as I often say, and as I mentioned this to you before we got started recording here today, in no way are we doing therapy. You know,
right.
I'm not about that. So it's as much as you want to share. But I love, love, love hearing about people's lives. And for years, I've asked people, most of my history was working with people with disabilities. And for many of them, people didn't ask them about their history. You know, there were big binders full of shit about their history it was other people's perspective. So I think I first learned my love of hearing people's stories from people with disabilities who got to tell their tales, and in many different ways. And what I most love, and I think most of us focus on, particularly those of us whose hair is a little whiter or grayer or whatever, we focus on incidents and episodes and situations, almost like photographs or snapshots of life. And while that's really, really interesting, I'm always much more interested in kind of the chapters of our life, because what I've learned in looking at my own life, as well as hearing so many stories from others, is that while there may be incidents and episodes that seem transformative in various ways, there were other things and themes that were going along too. And so I'm just curious if you'd share with us some of your chapters of your life, if you will. And again, as much as you're willing to share.
Well, I think the first chapter was one of the most important things that happened to me was when I moved from Niagara Falls and I was 12. My dad got a job in Arizona and we traveled across the country, and I really enjoyed differences. So exploration of self and exploration of differences. So I came to Arizona. The first thing everybody talked to me about was I talked too fast because I was from New York. So I started to slow down, and I got influenced by both the native Navajo culture and the Hopi culture. And it just felt really nice to be out in open spaces. So that was a real opening up. So exploration, I feel like I've been given many great teachers and many great gifts, but basically people who I felt inspired to. I remember when I was 18, I made a choice, very private choice, that I would be of service for my life. And I've done that. And luckily, I came across a lady who was my counselor at Arizona State University. And that kind of got me on the role of the whole phase of exploration. And so that's been a process that's come throughout my whole life and just taken on different kind of dimensions. There was the obviously psychological aspect. There's the whole spiritual thing, which is a kind of an ongoing process. And part of that is exposing myself into situations where I'm different. That's one of the things I like about living on Maui. It's a real mixed bag here. I like being in cultures where they're mixed racially, mixed, economically, mixed politically. It's nice to be in that exploration phase. So that's been a big part of my life. So personal exploration, spiritual, but the whole thing of service. And I wrote something about a year ago. I was asked by a healthcare practitioner to summarize my life. And I immediately wrote down 3 words. And the first word was service, the second word was sacrifice, and the third word was suffering. And when I read the suffering thing, I went, whoa, what was that all about? And I was almost embarrassed that I wrote that down. But part of it comes from the Catholic upbringing that you have to give, and sometimes you give and you give to others and you don't give to yourself. So I had to change that program. One of the things that I'm really interested in is the whole perceptual process. So how each one of us makes sense of our reality. I think it's a very interesting thing. I don't think any one of us see the whole picture, but certainly can, by reading, by interacting with other people, by just, doing meditations and other kinds of practices, really get a sense for what am I looking for, wanting to hear. And so that process is ongoing. And so I'd like to keep on doing more of that in my life. So kind of a combination of those 2 things. I think I was really out of balance in my life in terms of having more focus on the work part of my life and not relationship. And now I'd like to have more focus on relationship with myself and with others. And so a 70-year process.
And other chapters, where you were, where you lived, because I know you've lived different places. And
yeah, well, I guess I just kept going west. And so, Arizona, the next place I really wanted to go was California, and particularly Esalen Institute. So I got to hang out there. When I was in the Army, I was a medical service corps officer, and I led groups in race relations and human relations and drug and alcohol stuff. And then I got a job as a counselor at the college, worked with Vietnam vets. That was one of the more significant things that I've done in my life, helping people make the transition from being in a military environment and being in a war where these were medics who were trying to help people, keep them alive. I felt like that was one of the more powerful points of my life. Hanging out at Esalen and Big Sur, as you know, because you've been there, yeah? Boy, what a magical place. I just wanted to go someplace where I could be inspired by other people. One of the things I did to transition myself was I spent a year in 1978 as a work scholar. And so I worked there, and that's when I started learning body work. So that's the next kind of phase. I went from the psychological thing, understanding self and others, to doing body work. And luckily I came across some amazing people like Fritz Smith that who's the founder of Zero Balancing. And I find so much wisdom in the body, and I find a deeper way of listening in the body that I don't have to ask those why questions. I like the intelligence that's in our bodies that constantly comes through and speaks to us. So this may sound a little strange, but I listen, and sometimes when I'm working with people or working on people, there's actually little words that come through that tell me what to do or give me some kind of a message. And sometimes I share those things and we have some dialogue around that. So it's the whole process of kind of exploring the unknown or the blind spots that we all have. So bodywork's been a big part of it for me. And certainly getting into a meditative practice, which is important just to kind of calm and balance myself. Sometimes I can get more hyper than I think I want to be. But that comes partly with the dedication. Now I'm finding a softer kind of a easier place in myself. And I find that when I find that, then it's easier for other people to find that in themselves as well. So, and I want to say one more thing. I know you've been a vegetarian for how long? How long have you been a vegetarian?
44 years.
Wow. Okay. So I've recently gotten into, I've been off and on kind of a vegetarian, but I've noticed the difference. And one of the points that some people make is that when you eat plants, it changes your whole vibration, your whole perceptual process. And I think that's really true. And I think part of what's going on right now on the planet is the fact that we've abused the planet, we've abused animals, and we're kind of paying the price for all of that. So there's a book by Will Tuttle that talks about the vegan type diet. I'm sure you're familiar with that book. But it's just been an interesting process. I got into reading the book, and all of a sudden I just, wow, it really does affect everything. And so I think the more we can tune into those things that are nurturing, that don't have to be acquired by killing something, that it's going to change everything on our planet for sure.
I agree. And I think that's, oh my gosh, welcome to the other side.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I know you've explored various lifestyles and things, so I'm not surprised to hear this. And I think that's also why you look so amazing. You've got this very lively glow about you.
Thank you.
And I would think that that's at least part of it.
Yeah. Well, I went through a triple heart bypass back in August. And I went to my doctor. I was having breathing issues. We got my lungs checked out. They were fine. Then I got my heart checked out, and I found out I had blocked arteries. And so I immediately scheduled an operation. The operation went very well, but it felt like it was really a mystical experience. I mean, I had no problems with the operation. I was out of the hospital in 4 days. Obviously, my chest was sore from being, cut open and all that stuff. But I really felt this tremendous amount of love in and around me. And I felt like I'd been given total blessings and miracles from angels, from good friends who were paying attention and praying. I really believe in the process of prayer. I think it's a transformational process, both personally and societally. But anyway, that has shifted things for me big time. And so now it's a question of living from that more open heart space.
It's so interesting. And another good friend of mine here on Maui, who I also just recently interviewed, had double bypass surgery, I think 5 or 6 years ago. And I know he talks about that it literally opened his heart.
Yes, it does. It's it's very hard to describe. I mean, it took me weeks or months just to figure out. I mean, I couldn't even put words to it. I just had this amazing feeling, and it was very trippy. And so I'm very grateful that I had that. It all was very timely. I didn't have to have a heart attack, and but certainly my diet over all those years, eating too much and probably eating too many fatty things weren't good, obviously, and clogged all those arteries up. So I got a gift.
Yeah, you sure did. We all did. Thank you. And I'm glad you didn't have to go through the heart attack in order to get it.
Yeah, I don't think I want to do that one. I think I'll pass on that.
I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Let's pass on that. So I think you've mentioned this already in various ways, but your driving passions, your mantras for living.
Well, to continue to be of service, to do something that helps build community, to maintain my friendships and explore and expand upon those. Obviously, to do some traveling, mostly to see family and friends. There isn't really, for a while, I really wanted to write a book. I still may want to do that. I've written all these chapters and outlines, but it's about the perceptual process that I talked about, and a little bit about some poetry and just observations that I've made and things that I want to share with people as points for dialogue mostly. And I'd like the idea of, you participated in some of those yourself, where we just get together and do some things and talk about what you're feeling, as you would say, notice what you notice. And but I like that process because I find there's lots of wonderful people here on Maui and around the planet that have so many wonderful things to share. And if you create an environment in a group, and it can happen over the internet now as opposed to in person, but where people can be acknowledged for their wisdom, for their sensitivity, even for sometimes their stupidity, and there are other things that get blinded in them. But when it's safe to share all those things, as you well know, then there's a sense of insight and acceptance and learning that happens just kind of very organically. And that's something that's important to me. So if there's anything I want to do, it's to do more of that. But I've eliminated the suffering thing out of those three equations. So being of service, having more fun, but forgetting about the suffering one. I think I've done enough of that one. So, and just feeling grateful. I really feel a sense of gratitude for being on Maui, for having the health I have, for the friends that I have. And it's going to be interesting what happens in the future here. There's going to be some great choice points that we all get to make here. And so that hopefully we'll start making more intelligent ones and seeing our humanity. And I see the other thing that's happening is really, and I saw this some 50 years ago, is the rise of feminism and having women take more leadership roles, which they're doing. Countries that have women as leaders are finding that they have, so many things that are healthier about the whole country and the whole environment. And it makes sense to me. It's that coming from that loving, divine, nurturing space. And I think that's important. And many years ago when I was in college, I read a book by a guy named John Powell called, I'm trying to space on it right now. It'll come to me in just a second here. But it was basically, Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Am was the name of the book. And I thought that was apropos, because sometimes as a sensitive man, you don't want to share things because you get put down. I think that's changed a whole lot. Men are being acknowledged as human beings and sensitive beings, and it's not anything that takes away from their masculinity. But I remember reading that book 50 years ago and how important it was and how much things have changed. And so if I can be some part of that change for improvement, I would like to continue to do that.
That's beautiful. I know you just recently wrote something about the divine feminine.
I did.
I was struck once again by the punster John being so sensitive and wise and not afraid to speak something that I think a lot of men are afraid to speak, that they would be seen as too feminine or gay or something or other. And it was so beautiful. Do you have it available?
I do. So just a little background. I went, this was when we were all on lockdown. I went to the beach. I was the only person there. I went near the whale sanctuary here in Kihei. And it was totally quiet, very still and very peaceful. Anyway, this is what came through. It's called A Prayer to the Divine Feminine. Oh, sweet sister to all sisters, mother of all mothers, thank you for your divine presence in my life. I welcome your love, clear guidance, and protection as I move through my daily activities. I feel your ever-present love blessings within and around me, illuminating my chosen path so that I may, as open-heartedly as humanly possible, awaken the divine within me. So, thank you.
So beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I should explain, because my hope is that there might be somebody watching this in 5 years or 10 years or whatever, because this is being recorded and going to be available on YouTube and all that stuff. So I should, people, the lockdown that we're mentioning, that we're talking about, this is April 22nd. It's Earth Day, by the way,
right.
50th anniversary of Earth Day. It's April 22nd, 2020, and we're in the midst of the coronavirus. I don't know what it'll be called in the future, but that's what it's being called now, COVID-19. And so even though John and I are about 45 minutes away from each other in Maui, we have to meet online because we're both kind of in stay-at-home mode. We're allowed to go out and to exercise and go to essential business and things like that, but otherwise we're supposed to stay home, and we're wearing masks. And as you mentioned, there is much uncertainty about the future, except the certainty that I think you speak of, that many of us know, is that things have to change. We have to be different in many different ways.
Yes. And I want to acknowledge you, because this has been your life's path too. I mean, you've done an amazing amount of support for people that have challenges in their lives, and you continue to have that dialogue. And the other thing I like about you is your playfulness, and that's why I call you Rosa. Rosa. Yes, so I just wanted to acknowledge you, and when you asked me to do this, I was very touched, and I know you'll do lots of this with other people as well, and it's just a nice thing to keep the dialogue going. And your questions are wonderful. I mean, I thought about them, and I'll continue to think about them probably after I get off and I go, oh, I wanted to say that. What did I forget to say? Or something like this.
Well, then we'll have to do part two. We'll do part two.
Okay, we'll do part two.
Thank
So the
you,
last thing you
John.
mentioned was something about a wish list. Really,
Yeah.
the only thing I really want to do is to do some traveling that I haven't done and spend some time with some really good friends on the mainland in Southeast Asia, in Europe, but just mostly to celebrate our friendship and spend some time outdoors, which obviously I can do here on Maui, but places that kind of draw my heart. But mostly it's hanging out with friends, the people that I've known for a long time, that I just enjoy having dialogue. I'll fly to California and have a glass of wine with my good friend Robert and see my friend David and Carmel. And I want to see my niece Jennifer and see my friends in France and visit people in the West Coast and maybe head out to Thailand again. I don't know if Cuba's in my list here, but
I think it should be. I think it should be. I know some people.
You know some people, right? Yes. So thank you for being the bright light that you are, because you really are one, and the courage and the ease with which you share things. I mean, that's really something I think we have in common. When you came to my school 14 years ago, I saw who you were and how much light you brought in and how much positive and how much openness. It's an incredible process, that healing process, to get people to trust in themselves. Sometimes we're very mental, especially if we've had training in psychology and social work and all those kinds of things. But to move more into the heart and just be there and to trust our feelings and to trust the wisdom that's in our beings and in our bodies. It's a wonderful thing. It's constantly evolving and constantly teaching us more of what we need to know. That's one of the things that I feel so grateful for in my life, is that I got into body work and started using my hands, and I quit thinking so much. And yet, I could use certain things that I was taught that actually turned out to be more expansive than contractive in nature. And it's an unfolding process. So to that end, I think we're headed in the right direction. Let's hope it continues in that way.
I sure hope so. And thank you.
Thank you.
So to take you back, well, let me think. I say I don't throw in a question, but with you, I have to.
Okay.
And it's the one you asked me that, as Mike said, stopped me in my tracks. So where do you find your energy? What is its source?
Wow, great question. I think it's in my heart. I think it's also something that I was born with. I came with the belief that I chose to be here this lifetime. I have a direct memory of that experience, that I came to be of service. I think energy and information are available everywhere at all times. I had a very mystical experience when I was in graduate school. I was standing in front of a bulletin board, and it just had normal things that you do. There's this class and this workshop and blah, blah, blah. But all of a sudden, I had this experience that all the information that I ever needed was right here, right now, and all I had to do was tap in to receive that. And so that is a gift that we're all given. And so having had, I have no idea where that came from. I wasn't on any drugs. I was standing in front of bulletin boards, and I had that experience at a time where whatever we need, it's right here. And that to me is something I continue to honor, and that's where my energy comes from, which I think is both my personal part of the universe.
Wow. And I don't know if the recording's going to pick it up or not, but talk about timing, just as you started getting deeper into that.
So there was something happened in the computer there, everything kind of went south. So
yeah, you kind of went alien-ish, but it's cool. It was perfect timing. It was like you were talking and you didn't know where it came from. And then all of a sudden there was this otherworldly John speak happening. It was awesome.
Thank you. Well, to be continued then, huh?
Yeah. So the last question I think that I have for you, I'm famous for, and one more thing, but so going back to the very first question, going back after all of this beautiful conversation, going back to the very first question. So who is John Sanderson?
Well, you're making it difficult on me. I think he's a person who saw himself on a mission and openly embraced that mission, sometimes with not the greatest confidence, but understanding the importance of community. So someone who supports community, someone who enjoys learning, and someone who enjoys the company of conscious other beings that are here to just enjoy and have fun with and sometimes be of assistance to. So multidimensional, a little goofy at times. I have my ups and downs. I do a lot of introspection in my life, and sometimes I go to some places that are challenging and dark. But I somehow make it through that. And I'm grateful for all the light and love that exists on this planet and the people that I consider my friends, because without them, I couldn't have done it. So I don't know if that answers the question in a way that works, but I
think it sure does. Thank you. Thank you so much for being there for me, for being my teacher and mentor. For helping me really land here in Maui, and for doing all you do for everyone, and for being willing to talk with us today. Thank you so much. Mahalo, my friend.
Thank you very much. Aloha.
Aloha.
All right.
This series on being a service warrior is brought to you by Networks for Training and Development Incorporated via funding by the Philadelphia and Northumberland Counties Behavioral Health Intellectual Disability Services in Pennsylvania, and with the help of Joe Sterling of Joe Doggy Productions, Waikapu, Hawaii. Many thanks to all our guests and fellow firewalkers for sharing their wisdom, learnings, and joy with us.